Good evening, everyone. Welcome.
Good evening. My name is Frances Separovic, and I'm a member of the Executive Committee of the Australian Academy of Science, and I'm the Foreign Secretary, which means I have responsibility for international scientific engagement.
And I'm Lynn Beazley, and I too am a member of the Executive Committee, and I'm the Secretary for Education and Public Awareness, and we're your MCs for tonight. It promises to be a wonderful evening. We're going to cheer already. That's great. As you can see, we're in the pink already, so I hope you're all in the pink metaphorically, and we're looking forward to an absolutely marvellous evening. You know, this week has got off to a super start, a marvellous science extravaganza, and it's only Wednesday. We've more to come. It started on Monday with the Prime Minister's Prizes for Science in this very hall, honouring scientists, innovators and STEM school teachers. And just down the road at the Shine Dome this week, we have admitted 68 fellows to the Australian Academy of Science. Yay. And you are, those 68, the very people we're celebrating particularly tonight, because you are amongst the most accomplished scientists from every discipline and from across our vast land.
We'd like to extend a very warm welcome to all our guests this evening. There are so many people we would like to acknowledge, more than the time we have together this evening. So please do forgive us for mentioning just a few. The Honourable Ed Husic, Minister for Industry and Science, many members of Parliament and Senators, thank you for joining us in such a busy week. All of our fantastic fellows and our inspiring President, Professor Jagadish, Australia's Chief Scientist, Dr. Kathy Foley, Nobel Laureate Professor Brian Schmidt, to the families and friends of fellows, many who have travelled to Canberra to help celebrate their remarkable achievements, including our youngest guest, Vivian Zhao, 6 years old. Yay! Karlie Alinta Noon, Gamma woman and astronomer, all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders joining us this evening, the committed and steadfast professionals across the Australian Public Service, heads of Australia's publicly funded research agencies, and I'll hand over to Lynn because there's so many more.
And we also welcome the winners of the Academy Awards. These are the real Academy Awards, everybody. Forget those Oscars. This is the real thing. And we welcome wholeheartedly our ever-inspiring and dedicated early and mid-career researchers. Please, all of you, stand up, because we want to acknowledge you. Because we value you immensely, and you are the future for this country. We welcome also members of our national committees, presidents and CEOs of all the Australian Learned Academies and of the Australian Council of Learned Academies, ambassadors, high commissioners and other members of the diplomatic community, chairs and CEOs of scientific peak bodies and associations, all our supporters, partners and donors, welcome and thank you for your generous support. And a special thank you to our Science at the Shine Dome event partners. We couldn't have done this week without you. Yes, round of applause for that. We welcome our friends from the Parliamentary Press Gallery and other parts of the media and social communicators, and to all the Academy staff who have worked so hard to pull all this together. Many weeks of dedicated work. Well done, you guys. To all our distinguished guests and friends, welcome tonight. Thanks every single one of you for being here. It's wonderful to be together again after 2 years of COVID keeping us apart. And to begin this evening, we're honoured to invite a friend and advisor to the Academy, Auntie Violet Sheridan, to the stage to welcome us to country. Auntie Violet, please join us on stage.
Well, what a pleasure it is to be here tonight, and I want to say a big thank you to Professor Jagadish and his staff and the Australian Academy of Science for showing so much respect to my people, the Ngunnawal people, and acknowledging them and having me along to do the welcomes. Particularly a big thank you for having me to do the welcome for the fellowship, and I was so pleased to see Tom Karma receive one, and I want to congratulate him. And another big surprise it was for me to learn all about the fellowship, and this year that 50 women and 50-50, women and men. How good is that? So the Academy of Science also celebrates the winners of Pacific Awards. The Gala dinner is a time to come together and celebrate these achievements, but also to look forward to the next generations. To those who are fellows yet but are doing critical research at an early phase of their career to advance the science and to deepen our knowledge of the world around us, the Academy is also working hard. The Academy is working hard to work together with Indigenous knowledge holders in a respectful manner. So that is lovely. So I'd also like to acknowledge Ed Husic, Academy President Professor Jagadish, other distinguished guests, ministers, senators, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the land of the Ngunnawal people. I'd like to pay my respects to my elders past, present and emerging, and extend that respect to other, if there's Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present here today. I'd also like to acknowledge all you non-Indigenous people as well. And keeping in the general spirit of friendship and reconciliation, it gives me great pleasure to once again welcome you to the land of the Ngunnawal people, my mother's land. On behalf of me, my family, and the other Ngunnawal families, I so welcome. Have a wonderful night, enjoy yourself. And one more thing before I go. If you haven't learned about the Uluru Statement of the Heart or the referendum that's coming up, and I'm telling you it's coming up soon, I just got a feeling. You need to learn. So when we walk to the future, you need to be walking beside us and vote yes. Thank you.
So thank you, Auntie Violet, for welcoming us to the land of the Ngunnawal people. And I hope that the referendum in 23 or 24 is overwhelmingly yes, like it was in 1969.
Hear, hear. And, you know, on Monday night, Minister, you presented the award for the STEM School of the Year to little old Marble Bar Primary School with 25 students only, but setting the standard using Indigenous knowledge as a core value and practice. And I think that said so much. And you've been a huge supporter of making sure that we are having a journey together to build the future. Thank you for that. Round of applause, I think. Well, as I was saying earlier, this week, just across the lake at the iconic Shine Dome, we've been hosting our flagship event, Science at the Swan, at the Shine Dome. What am I saying? Swan's Western Australia, guys. And this year's event is one of our most important ones. It's for the history books, because we welcomed new fellows from 2020, 2021 and 2022, and 3 years of new fellows, of course with COVID stopping us meeting earlier, and admitting, as I said earlier, 58 new fellows to the Academy. Each of them signed the historic charter book, and that contains the signatures of all the fellows since the Academy was founded back in 1954. It's a precious moment to see. Science at the Shine Dome wouldn't have been possible without the support of generous partners, and tonight this marvellous gala dinner is supported by the University of Sydney. So I'm delighted to invite Professor Kathy Bellog, who is not only at the University of Sydney the Pro-Vice-Chancellor Global and Research Engagement, but also is one of our newly elected fellows, how appropriate, to the stage to say a few words on behalf of the University of Sydney.
Thank you so much, Lynn and Francis, and thank you, Auntie Violet, for that really inspiring welcome. It was really touching. I too would like to acknowledge the Indigenous people on these lands and also any Indigenous people in the room. So the University of Sydney is proud to be sponsoring tonight's dinner and is really proud to partner with the Australian Academy of Science. And so on behalf of the University of Sydney, I'd like to congratulate all of the new fellows and awardees. I know how hard you've worked to win these accolades and the tremendous breakthroughs you've made through your research. You have directly contributed to Australia's economic and social prosperity. Now, COVID did interrupt our plans to celebrate a couple of times, but this just means that this year we get to celebrate with 3 times as many new fellows and awardees. So it's going to be that much more fun, and what a great celebration it is. So today, I'd like us all just to take a moment to thank the people that have helped us along the way, our teachers, our mentors, our friends, and most importantly, our families. I encourage you all, if you haven't already, to take a moment in the coming days to give them a call or send them a message just to say thank you. And I've been very fortunate throughout my career to have an amazing cheer squad. But tonight I'd like to particularly pay tribute to Marilyn Renfrey, who's been an amazing role model, mentor and friend to me. Marilyn's not only mentored me, but she's really championed me, including nominating me to become a fellow of this wonderful academy. So to the ECRs in the room, I really recommend that if you don't already have one, find yourself a Marilyn. It makes navigating your career so much easier and so much more fun. I also recommend that you use your voice, and that doesn't just go to the ECRs, it goes to everyone in the room. When I started my career as a marsupial researcher 20 years ago, I never thought that my science would help guide policy in New South Wales and in Australia, or that a government would almost be brought down twice by koala wars. But koalas, the biodiversity crisis and climate change will continue to be major election issues. So it's important that we continue to provide sound advice to our governments to allow them to make decisions that help plan for a sustainable future for our planet. And there are 2 ways that you can get involved now. Please consider making submissions to 2 critical reviews that are underway. Margaret Shield is reviewing the ARC, and Mary O'Kane is leading the University Accord to drive reform in the higher ed sector. So together, we need to find a way to secure an Australian research pipeline from basic and translational research right through to commercialisation, and to support a strong future for research and innovation in Australia. Congratulations again to the fellows and awardees. I hope you have a lovely evening.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you to the University of Sydney. The Academy treasures its relationships across the STEM sector, and we're so pleased to count the University of Sydney as an ally in the advancement of science in Australia.
As we said earlier, this is a bit of a first for us because we've been away for a while, but it's also a first for our much treasured new, not too new though, President, the wonderful Professor Chennupati Jagadish. And you've been President for just a few months, but your leadership and energy have already had such a positive and wonderful effect. And I know the fellows across the country will join me in saying how much you have been welcomed. So it's my great pleasure to invite you as President of the Australian Academy of Science. Professor Jagadish, please to the stage to deliver your President's address.
Lynn and Francis, thank you for that introduction. Auntie Violet, we appreciate your generous welcome to us here on Nanwal land. Kathy, thank you for that warm welcome, and also thank you for your support to the Science at the Shrine Dome annual dinner. Good evening and welcome. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Nanwal people. I acknowledge and pay respects to the traditional owners, elders, past, present, and emerging of all the lands on which the Academy operates and its fellows live and work. Daruwa Nuna, Daruwa Nanwal. Yangu Nalwari, Dinmaniyan, Nanwal Wari. Daruwa Wari. Ningada, Dindi, Daruwa, Nanwal Bun. Injimarra, Linjinyan. This translates to, this is Nanwal country. Today we are gathering on Nanwal country. We always pay respect to elders, female and male, and Nanwal country. The Academy also embraces the invitation made in the Uluru Statement of the Heart. This is to walk with you in a movement of the Australian people for a better future. In particular, we have much to gain as a nation by establishing a First Nations voice to Parliament. It will embed respect, equity, and inclusion into our Australian identity. Just as we need to come together to achieve reconciliation, we must likewise come together if we are to overcome the greatest challenges of our times, that which threatens the very earth we walk upon. The impacts of climate change are being felt by millions, in particular our most vulnerable. The State of the Climate 2022 report, released today, has found changes to weather and climate extremes are happening at an increased pace across Australia. The worsening impacts of climate changes on the lives and well-beings of millions of Australians demand that our political leaders work together with world leaders to achieve more ambitious emissions targets. As we sit here comfortably in the Great Hall, having nice dinner, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge all those who are still reeling from the shock at having lost loved ones, homes, and businesses in the New South Wales flood disaster. And indeed, anyone struggling with the impacts of the extreme weather and climate events in recent years. Climate change is an enormous and complex problem. Unfortunately, it is not the only one we face. As the world grapples with the multiple, overlapping, and interconnected crises, the need for solutions grounded in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics has never been greater. But there's a cause for hope. Over the past few days, I've watched with a genuine sense of optimism, excitement, and awe the presentations of our new fellows, Australia's most distinguished scientists, as part of the Science at the Shrine Dome. To all of you, I say thank you for your efforts. Many of you are working on solutions to the global crises we face, or on discoveries that illuminate the inner machinations of our bodies or our world. The work may be tiring, it may be occasionally frustrating, it might even keep you away from your family and friends at times, and if that is my experience for probably half of the year, but what important that work is. And that's why you're all up in lights of our wonderful centerpieces on each table tonight. And that's why tonight we celebrate science and we celebrate you. Now, I completely understand if some of you are experiencing a sense of deja vu, having only been here 2 nights ago. But isn't it wonderful, after a 3-year hiatus, to be meeting face to face in 3 dimensions rather than through a screen? And really, can there ever be too much science? Congratulations to all our Prime Minister's Science Prize recipients, including Academy Fellow Professor Trevor McDougall, who is here with us tonight. Let us congratulate all of our Prime Minister's Science Prize winners. For those of you who have been with us at Science at the Shrine Dome this week, I trust you have enjoyed it so far. There's more to come tomorrow, so pace yourselves tonight. I'd like to acknowledge our distinguished guests here tonight, Australia's Minister for Industry and Science, the Honourable Ed Husic, federal and ACT parliamentarians. It's great to see politicians of all stripes here tonight. Past presidents of the Academy, Professors Andrew Holmes, Kurt Lambeck, Jim Peacock, Brian Anderson, Karlie Noon, Gamilroy women, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander scientists across disciplines. Yama Karlie. Thank you, Auntie Violet. So, Chair of the EMCR Forum, Dr. Rafaela De Michelis, members of the diplomatic community from around the globe, distinguished guests from across the STEM sector, and our friends in the media. A few special mentions as well. Thank you for our gala dinner event partner, the University of Sydney. Tonight would not be possible without your support. I'd also like to acknowledge a really special group of scientists in the room, dozens of early and mid-career researchers. These are the future leaders of science. You've had it tough these past few years, particularly women in STEM. In many cases, the impact of COVID-19 has made worse the challenges and barriers you face in progressing your careers. I recently met with the EMCR Forum executive. They are working hard on improving the national research environment for early and mid-career researchers and in making government aware of the challenges being faced by them. So am I. I also want to ensure we include and listen to underrepresented voices when we design solutions to address the structural and cultural barriers faced by emerging STEM professionals. One way of addressing the challenges early and mid-career researchers face is to increase investment in R&D. Despite the several budgetary pressures currently facing our country, I believe Minister Husic is working with his cabinet colleagues to convince them of the importance of raising spending from today's 1.79% of the GDP and edge that up closer to 3%. And so, Minister, whenever you convince your cabinet colleagues, and you'll be getting the standing ovation from all of us. Yeah. And I know he's supporting of greater investment in science. I also know from personal experience how important mentors are for early and mid-career researchers to be successful in their careers. When I met with the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese recently, I mentioned I would probably be the ploughing the fields in India as members of my family are if it wasn't for a mentor during my schooling years, where, for those of you who don't know, I lived with my maths teacher in a neighboring village for 3 years, and he treated me like his own son, and without my 2 teachers' support in my high school, indeed, I'll be ploughing the fields in India. I'm so grateful to teachers, and as Monday we celebrated, teachers play a very important role, mentors play a very important role in the lives of all of us. Now that there is nothing wrong in ploughing fields, but my hopes and dreams and my potential lay more in semiconductors than soils. But I know that my colleagues, those are working soil science, and please continue to do soil science. It's important for our agriculture industry as well. You know. The impact of mentoring had on my trajectory cannot be underestimated. It was life-changing. I will never forget it. My challenge to all the fellows politicians, and science leaders here tonight in the room is this. Strike up a conversation with an early and mid-career researcher tonight or tomorrow or in the coming weeks. And I'm pleased to see many fellows here tonight. The silver lining of 3 years of disruption is the joy and delight we feel to be reunited. Thank you to each one of you for the expertise you contribute voluntarily to the academy activities and to the nation, so science can be seen and heard wherever decisions are made, in our parliaments, our boardrooms, our courts of law, our classrooms, or in our public squares. Congratulations to all our awardees. We'll be honoring 3 of them tonight, and they will also deliver their lectures tomorrow. Earlier, I discussed the outstanding contribution to science our new fellows have been sharing these past few days, how that is a cause for optimism. Another reason today to feel hopeful is the new government. The early signs are that they appreciate, understand the role of science domestically and internationally. Within weeks of being sworn in, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese visited Indonesia, taking with him Foreign Minister Penny Wong and Minister Ed Husic. This was just the beginning of efforts to develop stronger relationships with our neighbors. In fact, that visit made a huge difference. In fact, last month I was in Jakarta and for the G20 Science Academy's President's meeting, and many of the Indonesian colleagues came and said how pleased they are, and particularly Minister Husic, they are so pleased that you are the science minister. Okay. On budget night, the Australian government announced $10.3 million over 6 years for Australia to host the International Science Council's regional presence for Asia and the Pacific. As some of you would know, the International Science Council is the only international NGO bringing together natural and social sciences. It's also the largest global science organization of its type. This shows the government understands society's reliance on science and technology to solve global issues, and that we are operating in a more complex geopolitical environment demanding a more sophisticated approach. The investment comes at a time when governments across the world are applying new restrictions on international scientific collaboration because of potential national security implications. We know that when relations are fraught, science diplomacy is more critical, not less. Thank you, Minister, for championing for that for International Science Council regional presence. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. So when I met, as I mentioned, that I met Science Academy presidents as part of G20 in September, where we discussed greater international cooperation in key priority areas. So also there's, particularly when we are coming out of COVID, the theme of that meeting is working together, growing stronger. So that's why the working together is a really important part, particularly global issues like climate change and pandemics. We cannot solve those problems. It's very important to work with our international colleagues. In this current global context, Minister Husic has focused on science value beyond our borders. I know that he appreciates what a powerful tool science diplomacy offers for the scientific and foreign affairs landscape. I thank the government for this investment in the Academy to host the Asia-Pacific regional presence of the International Science Council. Well, we also look forward to working closely with the government on its science and research reform agenda. This includes its review of Australia's national science and research priorities and the National Science Statement, and reversing the 10-year decline in Australia's investment in research and development as a percentage of GDP. In the spirit of saving the best till last, I have 2 pieces of good news I'd like to share with you. I'd like to announce that Ukrainian scientists who fled the war with Russia or who have been unable to work due to the destruction of their workplace will receive a helping hand from Australia. The assistance has been made possible thanks to a generous donation to the Academy from the nonprofit Breakthrough Prize Foundation of $800,000. In fact, today we met at the Academy with the Ukrainian ambassador. He was quite excited about it, and then he is very much appreciative of the fact that the Australian science community is helping Ukrainian science community, and he's very happy that the Australian government is supporting the Ukrainian government and community as well. The donation will be used to support Ukrainian scientists who remain in the country as well as those who have fled the war. The donation will support initiatives including setting up long-term research collaborations between Ukrainian and Australian scientists focusing on early and mid-career researchers. We hope that we'll be able to support short-term visits for the early and mid-career researchers to come to Australia, work in one of the laboratories, and develop the collaborative linkages so that these collaborations will be a long-lasting one for them. Providing Ukrainian scientists with access to Australian science and research infrastructure and facilities, and sending data and samples to Australian research facilities for analysis with the results returned to Ukrainian research institutes. For example, NCRIS facilities which are supported by the government, synchrotrons and telescopes, microscopes, nanofabrication facilities, and many facilities can be accessed. And we hope that we'll be able to support with the Australian scientific community's support as well. The second piece of good news is a new Academy Award. It gives me immense pleasure to share with you the establishment of the David Wow Research Integrity Fellowship. It will recognize people who have led efforts to foster and promote integrity in science. Scientists in Australia and worldwide take seriously their responsibility to conduct research ethically and with integrity. We know how important it is to retain public and government confidence in our work. This new award rewards excellence in research integrity because it should be celebrated. The award honors Professor O, who, as many of you would know, has championed scientific research integrity in Australia over decades. Please put your hands together for David, who is here in the audience tonight. The Academy is also advocating for improvements in the research integrity is governed in Australia. We'd like to see a more robust system that applies to all publicly funded research that requires best practice in the investigation of allegations of serious misconduct, that improves transparency in reporting. Finally, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Academy staff under the leadership of Anna Maria Arabia for tonight's gala dinner and Science at the Shrine Dome. And also with a special thanks to Lisa Crocker, the Academy event manager, who has managed the largest Science at the Shrine Dome event because of the fact that we have not had a chance to celebrate for the last 2 years, and the first time we're meeting in 3 years' time in our history. Well, could you please join me to thanking them? Now, I invite everyone to network and mingle. Before you do this, for those who can, please stand and join me in a toast to Australian science. And I forgot to get my own glass.
Yeah, we have to get a glass.
Okay, sorry. Okay, Kathy is helping here. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Kathy. Okay.
I should have said that.
Okay. To Australian science.
To Australian science.
Please enjoy the evening.
Thank you very much. Hello. Good evening. We hope that everyone is enjoying the company as well as the food this evening. We have a treat for you all now. Please welcome to the stage proud Gamilaroi Yinya woman and astrophysicist from the Australian National University, Karlie Alinta Noon.
Karlie will lead a conversation with our Minister for Industry and Science, the Honourable Ed Husic. And Minister, you've asked particularly for this wonderful young astrophysicist to be interviewing you tonight. So stand Grant, step aside. We have you, Karlie. You're going to be leading. Please join us, Minister, and we look forward to hearing the conversation. Settle in.
They took my karaoke idea on, which is great.
Hello.
Annie, if you're with me, Annie.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Minister Husic. It's actually an incredible honour. Before we kick off, I of course would love to thank Arnie for welcoming us here, welcoming us all here onto the lands of your mum. Thank you so much. I would absolutely love to acknowledge the traditional owners of these lands and the traditional owners of all the lands that we live on, we work on, we do science on. It's honestly a privilege. So, I'm charged with the really fun task of grilling our new science minister.
That's not in the deal. No. No grilling.
No. I promise I won't be too harsh.
That's fine.
But I really just want to acknowledge how excited people are to have you as our minister. I've honestly heard nothing but really positive things about you. People are just so, I think, relieved to have someone who cares and loves science, right? It's honestly a huge relief after, some of the past few years we've had. So thank you so much for being here.
All those people you met, I actually set up, they're my family members.
Oh, sure. Okay, it makes sense now. It makes a lot more sense. So, is it okay if I kick off with a question for you? I see you've come prepared. I'm a bit nervous.
I've got a question for you.
Okay, do you want to go first?
No, you go first.
Okay, so my first question. You've been here for 6 months in this role. Not very long, but obviously by the reception we've had tonight and the other things that I've heard leading up to this, you obviously care a lot. You've done a lot of work in that time. I would love to get a sense of where that passion comes from and I guess where you hope it takes you in this role.
So I don't, as I've let you all know, I don't come from a science background. I grew up in Western Sydney. My folks immigrated here in the 60s. My dad got his first job because of an idea in Australia around building the Snowy Hydro. So he got a job here and my parents came here and he never went to, like I said, never went to uni. Mum never went to uni. They didn't even finish what we would class as high school. And grew up in western suburbs, as I said. Like many others, there'd be people here that have gone through the same thing. And to be honest, if I can be frank with you, I never expected to be in this role, in this job, growing up in Western Sydney, from the background that I was in. But the great thing is, my country, our country, gives us a chance. If you want to participate, you've got to fight for it. It's not on a plate. Nothing's easy, as you all know. But it gives us that chance. And the thing for me is that taking that point on, about opportunity, there are always, the thing is we've got to have belief in our ability to do more than what others think or ourselves think we can do. And there's always naysayers. I see it in business, I see it in media, I see it in politics. We can't do this. We're too small a country. There are all these other places that do it better than us. And it's always hard to butt your head against that type of thinking. But the reality is there are a lot of people in this room who just get the job done. They apply the power of their minds. They pursue notions, ideas, a view about the way the world will work, and you just get the job done. And in actual fact, that's what I think we need to do more as a country is, as I keep saying, and for those of you who've heard me say this before, forgive me for repetition, but we should keep saying it to everyone, to have belief in us, in our ability as a people to solve problems here and globally and to improve other people's lives. My big motivation is belief in who we are, who we can be, what we can do for others, and to use that in an immense way, in a powerful way for, if I may say it may sound trite, it may sound simple, but I think it's a powerful motivation to do things for good. That's what I'm about.
Again, huge relief. Because I think, for me personally, it's been a while since we've really been able to have much hope. There's been a lot that the entire world is up against, and we're going to continue being up against. And so, your sentiment of trying to do good and having that as the goal, I think it's been a bit of a long time since we've had people who prioritise that, and particularly people who are in positions of power. So, yeah, no, it's very, very awesome, very hopeful. Thank you so much.
Yes, but the other thing is too, if I may say, but we've all got to step up. We've all got to step up.
Yep.
And I think the nation's got this, can I just use the vernacular with you? Because, we all know. We always feel like if someone's doing well, they're up themselves. Like, the nation can't think that way in terms of the work that you do. We should let you strut a bit. We should celebrate that more and put that to work. So we look at what's happening in our climate. We look at what's happening with our health. We look what's happening as well between people. And some of the big challenges aren't just scientific. It's about getting people to appreciate, as I said the other night, that you would all be tested, and it's right to have ideas tested and to have notions pushed and the ideas that you have and the conclusions that you make. But from some quarters, you should never have had to have those challenges, particularly from government quarters. And so I do think this is a time for us to all step up. You all have... sorry, I'm doing that old man.
That's okay.
Oh, I shouldn't say that, sorry.
It's like a wand.
It's like... it's probably just because I'm always talking with my hands. But we've all got a role to play in stepping forward and championing ideas and saying that we can get it done.
Yeah. We have really big problems that we need to tackle, and we do need everyone. Absolutely. And I think you made a really good point about... I don't know if it's about getting different people in the same room, but I think there's something to say about accepting that we are a really diverse country, incredibly diverse. We all come from completely different backgrounds to our neighbours, and really coming to a point and focusing on the goal of being okay with that. I think, unfortunately, I think we've seen a bit of separatism happening all around the world, not just here, but all around the world. And, we have too many problems to be, judging our neighbours because of where they come from or their skin colour or whatever it is. So, yeah, I think you make a really good point there. Would you like to ask me a question?
Yes, I'd like to ask how you got started. I mean, what got you to this point, and those motivations that keep pushing you on? I think people would like to know, in terms of your own background and your own interests, What has sparked that and what maintains that spark for you?
I don't want to be a copycat, but really, to be completely honest, it was belief. It was belief in myself. It was belief in this country as well. Belief in that idea that we have the choice. We have the choice to do what we want with our lives, and we have the opportunity here in Australia. So it was really a huge belief in that. There were many aunties that helped me along the way. I come from a very, very strong line of many matriarchs, and from around my community, not just my family, but I had aunties helping me learn when school was a bit too much. I had aunties helping me take care of stuff at home, help me with my mum, and I still have that today. And really, that got me to uni. That kept me
Which
there.
uni?
Newcastle Uni, shout out.
Represent.
Which was actually a really fantastic uni for me. I had a really, I use the term turbulent childhood. I ended up leaving school when I was in year 8 due to just a lot of family responsibility, really. My sister left my sister got kicked out in year 9, my mum left in, year 9, my dad left in year 6. Education was not, a part of our family, our culture, our history. But that's when the auntie stepped in, that's when the grandma stepped in, and she's like, nope, you can do so much more. And I think, that responsibility that I did have, in one respect, it took me out of the mainstream pathway, that linear pathway that, most people get to go through. But at the same time, that's what drives me, right? It's my family, it's my community, it's how much pride when I go back home, my aunties and my traditional owners have in me. They won't let me quit. They won't let me give up. They are my biggest supporters, and everything I do is really to help my community, push us forward, get our name out there, and get our issues out there as well, because we're still fighting for our land rights, we're fighting for the health of our country, fighting against everyone who wants a piece of it, and so yeah, that's really what drives me, and I can't leave that without saying that also doing incredible science it's a dream come true. I get to work with incredible people. My amazing supervisor, Naomi, who you all become familiar with over the past few days. And, just being able to learn and potentially contribute to, a field like astronomy or, I think I could have really done anything, but I do quite enjoy doing physics and maths, unfortunately, for myself. But yeah, that pursuit of discovery and knowledge and learning and, really being at the forefront of that it's incredible and really a dream.
But I've got to ask, can you remember, where were you when you found out you were going to uni, and what was the reaction from family?
A bit underwhelming. As I said, we didn't really have a strong history with uni. My dad was not too thrilled. He was very keen on me getting a job at Coles. That's where he's worked since he was actually in year 8. So he's been there for 40 years now. And that's what he really saw me doing. That would have really made him proud. And my mum was a little bit different. I think my mum would be proud of me whatever I did. And, my mum's my best friend, but I think, when I first told her I was doing physics, I barely knew what physics was. So mum was just like, oh, what's that? And I tried to explain it quite poorly, but, I guess I didn't really think too much of it because, it wasn't this big exciting thing and I didn't know what was going to come from it, and it was just like, I was just throwing myself out there, really. I was just giving it a go and just hoping for the best. And, didn't want to get my hopes up too much, but I think that was actually really helpful for me. I didn't have these expectations on me. It was like, I could do whatever I want, so why not study the universe? I feel incredibly lucky and a little bit spoiled in some cases, but I was just like, that's awesome that we get to learn about that. Why not? Why would you not?
And in your field, this is actually, Jenny, if you don't mind me, keep asking.
Please.
In your field, what's the thing that that line of pursuit that you're most interested in? What's the thing that really energises you?
Oh, there is a lot. There is a lot. I think if I could say one thing and be really broad with it, it would be the fact that we don't know everything. That's really exciting. I don't want to know everything, right? I always want there to be a mystery that we have to work towards and we have to try and solve. So it's really, there's so many things. What the heck is dark matter and dark energy? What is our galaxy doing? It's quite a bizarre galaxy. There's so many things. Where is another planet that's like Earth? Where are the aliens? Where are the aliens? There's so many mysteries out there, and there's actually so much that we don't know, and that's incredibly exciting. That's literally what wakes me up.
And being able to see amazing things, this whole idea that a few weeks ago you could propel an object into the side of another asteroid and make that asteroid slow down from 11 million kilometres away, and we had people who were involved in this from different parts of the world.
Absolutely.
Just amazing in terms of that double asteroid redirection test.
Yeah.
In fact, I can still remember it. I don't know how. I didn't read it. I didn't pick it up recently. But being able to see that happen, and our people here being a part of that by the CSIRO, huge.
Yeah. And I think that's, I was having a conversation earlier and we were talking about telescopes and how special it is to go and, visit an observatory. As an astronomer, we don't actually often get to do that because you can do remote observing, you don't have to go there these days. But it's still really amazing to do it. And I think it's twofold. I think it's the fact that we get to use these instruments to connect to the universe, the galaxy, whatever it is, other planets. But I think the other side of it is it's incredible that, this telescope in particular, or, the DART mission, throwing something at an asteroid and changing its trajectory. It's really beautiful examples of the human endeavour and how clever we are, how much we can achieve when we come together. We work together and we try and solve some of humanity's biggest problems. And, international collaboration is incredibly important for science. Something like ESO was incredibly important during COVID. Up until now, this is something that Australia is very much participating in. I should not use acronyms, the European Southern Observatory. And, this is an opportunity for us to connect to the broader community out there. And that's how we advance science, when we're in our little bubbles. And it's not even just science, that's how we advance as people, as communities, as societies. When we're in our own little bubble, you can only go so far, right? I know we're all really clever people, but when we combine the brains of many really clever people, absolutely incredible things can happen.
And we should give it, yes, absolutely. Let's go. And give a shout out to the work that's about to start with the Square Kilometre Array as well. A huge effort over in WA, and picking up on that point about international cooperation too, and clearly working with a number of countries to make that a reality as well, which is going to be massive in your area.
Yeah, I actually use that telescope, the Meerkat telescope, which is in South Africa. It's like the other part of the Square Kilometre Array. So I'm very biased. I'm very, very invested in that telescope, and it provides us incredible data like we've never seen before, incredible high-resolution data, and that's when we get to find out new, exciting things about the universe. Really, I would love to get a sense of, I guess, your positioning and your understanding. So. Obviously, I'm a Kamilaroi woman. I grew up in community. I grew up surrounded by my aunties, and still to this day. And my culture, our knowledge systems has really informed me as a person, as a scientist, as a communicator. And the fact that, we now really openly and happily get to talk about our knowledge systems and celebrate it, and even actually incorporate it into, other fields, into science, into education, into all these different areas, that we now get to learn from our elders. And I'd love to get an understanding of how would you describe, the possibilities there. We can look back 65,000 years, if not more. How do you see Indigenous culture and knowledge and people going forward within this country and within science in the future?
Well, I think when we were talking about the voice and the importance of supporting it and understanding that there is context to all this, and in particular, again, forgive me because I touched on some of these points the other night, there was an active process of trying to delegitimise a lot of what First Nations people had achieved here, what they were doing, in terms of, we've seen the loss of so many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander dialects, and that was, as I said, designed to, in effect, prevent the transmission of knowledge between generations, particularly through storytelling and the role of culture, and the role in which that informed people about the way they relate to the land and the elements, one of the toughest continents on the planet. And then obviously, as part of that process of disconnecting people and being able to legitimise the fact that, you had a group of people that would come in, take control of land and dispossess others of who were already here as part of that process. This is not about making, and I often have this conversation elsewhere, it's not about making people feel guilty. It's not about making people feel uncomfortable, though it is important that people go through that process. It's to understand what's happened before and to understand and to put into context why the voice is important now to help correct that. But it's also important for us to understand we have a role to play in recognising, in terms of First Nations knowledge, the science and research community, we can all play our part within that broader campaign on the voice. This is the part I'm very keen for you all be able to contribute towards the support and the advancement and the recognition of First Nation knowledge and knowledge systems, and to be able to learn from that and apply that in various ways. And so I do feel very strongly that this is something that we should engage in, and I've said, for instance, that we'll embed this as the chief scientist who's here, Dr. Kathy Foley. I'm very grateful that she's leading the work on refreshing the national science and research priorities, and we've said that we'll, as part of that process, one of the nation's priorities will be to recognise and advance First Nations knowledge and the understanding of your knowledge systems. One. And the other thing I'm just going to frankly let you all know is we're going to appoint someone from a First Nations background for the first time. We've got to go through a whole process. I'll get in probably trouble because I don't follow process.
Shh. Doesn't leave
Well,
this
to be
room.
honest, we should have someone on the board of the CSIRO from a First Nations background. We're going to do it. So, just don't tell Albo I let you on.
Don't tell Larry.
Now, the media's not here. So. Yes, they are. No, Robyn, put your hand down, Robyn Williams. Anyhow, there are things we can do.
Yeah.
We can, and the great thing about our people is when you ask someone, just put yourself in someone else's shoes for a bit and understand. That's what we need to do, more and more. And that's why I think this is important. We've got a lot to learn, and I think if we take that opportunity, I think it's really important. And just to let you know, it also means I get to read great books like this, available at all good bookstores. It's Sky Country. Please buy a copy. So Karlie Noon and Crystal DiNapoli wrote this. It's all about astronomy, and this is the reason why I asked for you to be involved here tonight, because any chance I get to get an autograph on a book I have.
Oh, goodness.
But What's that?
I think Arnie's looking.
Oh, you're looking into it? No, this is my copy. I'm getting this autograph. Okay. Anyhow, please, people, go out, buy a copy. But there is a great series with this in terms of First Nations knowledge.
Absolutely.
Number of books that are being written.
Yep.
And so, please, I encourage you to read it and learn. And, as I said, walk in someone else's shoes.
Thank you so much, Ed. I think, I hope it's okay to call you Ed. You're absolutely right. This series is really, we have a high goal, and our goal was really to help inform everyone in Australia, not just other mob, but really, basically target non-Indigenous people and help them understand, not just our knowledge and how complex and sophisticated our knowledge systems go, but our communities as well, and our history and how we form that knowledge, but then what we have to do to keep that knowledge going and that culture going. Thank you so much. I have one last question. I think it's almost time up for us. One last question. I would love to know...
This has been a phenomenal effort. Everyone's been...
Yeah, thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much.
I'd love to know, Ed, when was the last time you looked up at the sky? Perhaps, when was the last time did you see the Milky Way? And what did it make you feel?
I always, whenever we get a chance with a full moon, it's always good to be able to go out and see that. I missed, I'm going to say to confess to you all, I missed the blood moon the other week. But the one experience that I really enjoyed in terms of looking up at the sky was as a 16-year-old sneaking into the shed, taking my dad's ladder and doing this phenomenally insane thing of climbing the roof in our home out in Blacktown. I'd managed to get from a friend of the family, they loaned us their binoculars, and being able to see in those binoculars Halley's Comet at that point in time was something else. And I was thinking, I'm not going to be able to see this ever again.
Yeah.
And if I do get to see it, I'll probably be as blind as a bat. Won't be able to anyway. But I always remember looking through those binoculars and thinking that I was there for that moment in time that got, that was recorded on the Bayeux Tapestry. That was like that rarity, that moment that you get to enjoy and be able to see that. And the thing is, I knew about it because folk like yourself were telling the rest of us that this is a special occurrence and then educating us about what this meant. And so that is always etched in my mind, and I got to see it maybe in 92, I don't know, maybe if someone can come up with some way to improve my eyesight before then and get that at Specsavers, that'd be really handy. But,
Oh, that was really special. Thank you so much. I felt like I was there hearing that. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for having me, Ed.
Thank you. Wait.
Oh, okay. We're doing this now.
Yeah. There's nothing awkward about doing this in front of everyone. We're done.
Well, Minister, on the 20th of April, we're going to have a wonderful solar eclipse up at Northwest Cape in WA. I don't know if you're planning to come, but I'm going to stick my neck out and say an invitation for you to be there. It's going to be a very special day, so you could... But anyone here who'd like to come and see a solar eclipse? Because, yes, hands going up. We've got 80 there wanting that. Because these special things in the sky, we must celebrate them. Absolutely wonderful. Thank you both so much.
So thank you, Minister Husic and Karlie, for a fascinating conversation. When you were speaking, it made me reflect on my own parents. My dad went to first grade and my mum went to second grade, and they also didn't understand what university was, but they were really impressed when I told them that I taught teachers, so that was good. So I think I speak for many of us in the room when I say how inspiring it is to see young scientists like Karlie. Listening to Karlie's passion and seeing so many early and mid-career researchers here tonight, I feel a sense of hope and comfort that our future generation is in safe hands and that we are walking in the right direction to value and respect Indigenous knowledges in all we do. Thank you.
We all share that sentiment. Thank you, Francis. And thank you, Minister and Karlie, for that candid and heartfelt conversation. I think it was absolutely brilliant. Do you think a second round of applause is absolutely deserved? And I must share this with you because I think it's marvellous. And in lieu of a speaker fee, at Karlie's request, the Academy has made a donation. It is to Beyond Bricks and Bars, an organisation that provides direct support to trans and gender diverse people who are incarcerated or at risk of incarceration in the state of Victoria. Well done. And now we move from a wonderful early career scientist, and I think, Karlie, you're going to have a wonderful career in science and science communication too, a brilliant way of conversing and sharing. We're moving from the early stage career to people who've made a lifelong contribution, a career-long contribution to science, and this is with the presentation of the Academy's Premier Awards. These are the awards, they're the most prestigious ones of the Academy, and they recognise a lifetime's achievement in science. And I'd like to ask you, Minister, you're staying on stage, and I'm inviting Professor Jagadish back as our President. I'm also inviting Vice President and Secretary for Biological Sciences, Professor Helen Marsh, to help us present these awards. We had hoped the Secretary for Physical Sciences, Professor Malcolm Sandbridge, would be with us too, but unfortunately he can't be this evening. So welcoming to the stage, and Helen, are you here too? Back to you, Francis.
Thank you, Lynn. The first award this evening is the 2020 Macfarlane-Burnet Medal. The Macfarlane-Burnet Medal and Lecture recognises scientific research of the highest standing in the biological sciences. It is a career award that commemorates the contributions to science by Nobel laureate Professor Sir Frank Macfarlane-Burnet. Along with the Matthew Flinders and Ruby Payne-Scott medals, it is one of the Academy's most prestigious career awards. This award is given by NLE, and this year we are celebrating the 2020 and 2022 awardees. The winner of the Macfarlane-Burnet Medal for 2020 is Professor Marilyn Renfree. Marilyn has pioneered modern research on the reproduction, evolution, conservation, molecular and comparative genomics of marsupials for 40 years, demonstrating their importance for biomedical research, as well as providing novel conservation and management approaches for our iconic kangaroos and koalas. Marilyn's lifetime passion for these long-neglected Australian animals has led to pioneering discoveries and insights that challenged assumptions and opened up new areas of biomedical research internationally. Marilyn has advanced our understanding of embryonic development and placentation, how the development of their embryos can be suspended, and how their extraordinary lactation is controlled. Her most important contributions have been to the field of sexual differentiation, overturning established paradigms and showing how genes and hormones interact during early development, providing new understanding of what makes a male and female mammal, leading to new clinical guidelines and making a contribution to our understanding of human sexual development as well as that of other mammals. I invite Professor, she is already on the stage, to accept her award. Thank you.
You're very clever.
Yes, we'll bring the mic to you.
Okay.
We will.
Yes, so Marion, you want to say a few words?
I'll do it here. Thank you, President. Thank you, Academy. Thank you, Minister. What a great honour. I couldn't have imagined achieving such an honour when I first started out on my PhD. But I have to acknowledge the role of my family, starting off with my parents. My father was the Commonwealth Crown Solicitor of Australia. There's even a Renfrey Street in Canberra. But he was a traditionalist, and he thought that my brother should go to university, but my sister and I should get married and have kids. So when I finished, I was much the youngest in the family. I said, I want to go to university and I want to study biology. And he said, but you don't know anything about biology. And I said, yes, I do. He said, okay, you can have 1 year. And he gave me 1 year of fees at university. And after that, I was able to get a scholarship and I effectively put myself through the rest. But he was so proud when I finally achieved various things, and he would have been even more proud tonight. But I have to also give great tribute to my husband, the late Professor Roger Short, who many of you will know as the most outstanding scientist in the world, loved by many, missed by everybody, and my lovely family, my 2 daughters, Kirsty and Tam, who have kept me on the straight and narrow. They never let me get away with anything. If I have the slightest hint of being pleased with something, they bring me down to the ground very fast. However, family is all important, but also so were my mentors. Hugh Tyndall-Biscoe was my PhD supervisor, and he set the scene for my later success. He really did. He is an amazing scientist himself. I also had E.C. Amoroso, who was one of the great placental biologists of the world, a Trinidadian, and he used to describe himself as, I'm an Afro-Anglican Indian. He was an amazing person. Anne McLaren, who was a Fellow of the Royal Society, I did a postdoc with her. She subsequently became a good friend and surrogate grandma to my children. And of course, Roger was my real mentor. We traded manuscripts loaded with red ink in both directions. But he taught me a lot, and I think I taught him a bit. So I want to thank the Academy for this great honour, and it is a great honour. I don't know what else to say except thank you.
We now present the Macfarlane Burnet Medal for 2022. And the winner is Professor Stephen Simpson. Steve, and he said I may call him that, has revolutionised the scientific understanding of swarming of locusts with research spanning neurochemical events in the brains of individual insects to continental-wide mass migrations. Steve, with his colleague David Raubenheimer, has developed a powerfully integrative framework for nutrition. The framework is called Biometric Framework, and it was devised and tested first of all in insects. It's now been applied to an enormous range of organisms, from slime molds to humans, and to problems from aquaculture and conservation biology, to the dietary causes of human obesity and to aging. Since 2012, Steve has applied his expertise to ease the burden of chronic disease in humans through a unique cross-disciplinary initiative at the Charles Perkins Centre of the University of Sydney. Please welcome Professor Stephen Simpson to receive his award. You have this podium.
I'm following Marilyn, and you have to forgive me. It's extraordinary to be in the company of somebody who's made such an enormous contribution. I too would like to thank the Academy, Jagadish, Minister, guests this evening. There's a saying that it takes a village to raise a child. When it comes to a scientist, it takes a global community. You obviously pay great tribute to parents, to teachers. You begin your career standing on the shoulders of giants. You're then carried hither and thither by colleagues and collaborators, people who are challenging and tempering your ideas. You don't know where you're going to go. You can go intellectually in very different directions, or geographically as well. All the while, if you're lucky, you're supported by a family, a loving family, who are able to give you the space and the freedom to do what you need to do as a scientist. And you need the support of institutions who pay your salary and look after you, and if you're lucky, granting agencies that fund you. Now, in all of these respects, I've won the lottery of life. My wife Leslie is in the audience here. I couldn't have done this without her. Our children, Nicholas and Alistair, likewise. The University of Sydney has had the vision and the ambition to do something extraordinary in the development of the Charles Perkins Centre at the University of Sydney. I'll speak a little more about that tomorrow. The requirements that we as a country invest not only in the disciplines that we need as a comprehensive academic community, and that extends beyond science, but also in the ways and means to bring those disciplines together such that we can really together challenge and tackle some of these enormous problems which are beyond the purview of science and certainly of single disciplines and require everybody's engagement. I started as a kid who, at the age of 3, when asked by an elderly aunt, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" Apparently, I said I wanted to be an entomologist. And indeed, I ended up being an entomologist. But had I gone to a funding agency and said, "I've got this idea, I want to study nutrition in locusts, because I think one day it might help us understand the global obesity epidemic," I think that would have tested the patience of any funding agency. But that's the way science works. Thank you for the ride. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm not dead yet, but I smell funny, as Frank Zappa once said. So with that, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, that was wonderful. The next award is the Ruby Payne-Scott Medal. The Ruby Payne-Scott Medal and Lecture is a premier career award that recognises women researchers of the highest standing in the physical or biological sciences. It is one of the most prestigious career awards of the Academy and honours Ruby Payne-Scott's pioneering contribution to radiophysics and radioastronomy. Tonight we are celebrating the 2021 and 2022 winners. The 2021 and inaugural winner of the Ruby Payne-Scott Medal is Emeritus Professor Cheryl Prager. Cheryl's work on the mathematics of symmetry has been in the vanguard of a mathematical revolution caused by the classification of the finite simple groups, the atoms of symmetry from which all finite groups are built. Cheryl has elucidated the internal structure of these simple groups and driven research on applying their immensely powerful classification to study symmetric structures. She established a new paradigm for working with symmetric graphs and exploited the simple group classification. Cheryl demonstrates an extraordinary ability to foster and inspire others, supporting women, advocating for mathematics in schools, and promoting mathematics in emerging economies. Please thank and welcome Cheryl Praggett to receive her medal.
I don't have such a great memory as everybody else. I'm reading Honourable Ed Husic, Minister for Industry and Science, Professor Jagadish, Mr. President, distinguished guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of this land, the Ngunnawal people, and to pay my respects to their elders past and present. It's a privilege and an honour to be the inaugural recipient of the Ruby Payne-Scott Medal and Lecture. Ruby Payne-Scott was a trailblazer for women in STEM. She was passionate about understanding the world through science, but despite her fundamental discoveries in astronomy, she was forced to resign her position in what is now CSIRO, as there were no maternity leave provisions for women scientists. And I'm deeply grateful that because of the efforts like people like Ruby, women like me now are able to have careers in science and maths as well as having families. Many fortunate things in my life conspired to enable me to become a mathematician. Like my mother persuading my father to allow me to do a so-called academic course at high school and then to proceed to university, that is, if I won a scholarship. I remember my experience as an undergraduate vacation scholar at the Australian National University, working with B.H. Neumann, Burnet, that made me determined to do a PhD in mathematics. On that occasion, I also met Bernard's wife, Hannah, the first woman professor of mathematics in Australia and the first woman mathematician elected a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Science. She was the kind of professor I wished to become. I'm grateful for the Commonwealth Scholarship, which took me to Oxford to do my doctorate, my DPhil, and for the wealth of mathematics and mathematicians across the globe I've had the privilege of learning from and working with throughout my career. They include, in particular, Peter Hall, the first child of Ruby Payne-Scott, who was one of Australia's most eminent mathematical statisticians and a former vice president of this academy. And these people also include my colleagues and students in the Centre for the Mathematics of Symmetry and Computation at the University of Western Australia. They create an exciting and stimulating work environment, and I so much enjoy working with all of them. I thank the Australian Research Council for funding support throughout my career. My work developed and exploited a groundbreaking mathematical achievement that identified all the atoms of mathematical symmetry, the finite simple groups. And it's fundamental science investigating symmetrical structures that arise in areas like information technology and biology, as well as in mathematics itself. I thank my wonderful husband, John Henstridge, who was determined that I should be able to continue my career in research and supported me for almost 50 years so far. Finally, I thank the Australian Academy of Science for establishing the Ruby Payne-Scott Medal for Women in Science, and I hope that it may help girls, encourage girls as well as boys to keep studying mathematics and science. And I congratulate all the other awardees over the last few days and especially this evening. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
a wonderful history to hear and put everything in context. And so many young Australians and people around the world have benefited by your generosity. Thank you so much. We now move to the winner of the Payne-Scott Medal for 2022, and it's Dr. Liz Dennis. Liz is a distinguished plant molecular biologist. She has addressed important basic questions in plant development, vernalization-induced flowering, and the increased yield of hybrid varieties. A feature of Liz's research work is her use of Arabidopsis, a plant favoured in laboratory research. It's really the sort of fruit fly, I think, of the plant world. And then transferring her discoveries to crop plants. This has proved a very powerful strategy. Liz's analysis of hybrid vigour has been outstanding in Arabidopsis and has been subsequently applied to rice, facilitating a really high increase in grain production. The development of high-yield varieties can now be expected for many other crops. How important in a hungry world. Many congratulations. My pleasure to welcome you to the stage to receive this very prestigious award.
So, Minister, President, Vice President, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I'd like to echo a lot of what Cheryl said. I think it's terrific that the Academy has made this award that women can aspire to. This award is for women scientists, and I think it's terrific to bring the profile up of women scientists. And I think Ruby Payne-Scott has been an inspiration to us, as she was a pioneer in radio astronomy and important for Australia becoming preeminent in radio astronomy in those early days. But because she was a woman, she was not able to fulfill her career potential, and so because of the regulations, she was a Commonwealth employee, and so you had to resign actually if you were married. And the CSIRO division, or what became the CSIRO division, turned a blind eye to the fact that she was married. But when she became pregnant, it wasn't so easy to turn a blind eye. Anyway, I think she has been an inspiration to women scientists, and it's terrific that she's getting the recognition as well, and that we women scientists look to her for inspiration and thank her for her work in science in Australia. Now, I started off as working on bacterial chromosomes with Jerry Wake in Sydney, but after a postdoc in New York, I came to join Jim Peacock's lab in CSIRO because I decided that really plants were a very important, really the fundamental to life. Plants are fundamental to life, and so to study plant processes in terms of understanding the genes and the changes in gene activity would be an important and worthwhile career. And I think also the increasing world population and the need to feed the increased population, and now it's 8 billion, was an important motivation to try and understand plant processes in terms of the genes and how it works, so that could be used for improvement in food production. Now, so I came to Jim's lab as a postdoc, and he was trained in botany, but together we both thought that it was important to try and understand the molecular basis of processes in genes activity. And it's been great. I've worked with Jim. Jim and I have worked together for 40 years, and so I really acknowledge his contribution and how good it's been to be part of a team, to work together, to be finding a lot about these plant processes, which I'll talk about tomorrow. And of course, as people have said, it's very important, the postdocs and the students and the family that have also been terrific support to me. So thank you very much for awarding me the Ruby Payne-Scott Medal for this year, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow about the actual plant stuff that we have done over the last 40 years. So thank you.
So thank you. I think Ruby would have loved to have been here this year when we admitted 50% women to the Academy of Science. Yeah. So the last award this evening is the Matthew Flinders Medal for 2021. We were not able to come together to celebrate this award last year, and it is my pleasure to be able to introduce our final award recipient to you this year, Professor Andrew Holmes. Andrew is recognised for his world-leading contributions to the chemical synthesis of organic and polymeric substances for use at the interface of material science and biology. Plastics have traditionally been used as insulators or lightweight structural components. However, as a result of Andrew's contributions in developing plastics that emitted light, when sandwiched between electrodes connected to the power source, the world now recognises that these materials can serve as semiconductors for flat-screen TVs, organic solar cells, and in transistors. Andrew led the Victorian Organic Solar Cell Consortium that delivered highly efficient solar shells and showed that they could be printed on plastic. In the area of cell biology, Andrew's research group collaborated with the Walter and Eliza Hall Institute to attach their synthetic signalling molecules to beads that could be used as fishing lines to identify many key proteins involved in colon cancer cellular signalling. Please congratulate Andrew Holmes. Congratulations, Andrew.
Minister Husic, President Jagadish, Vice President Marsh, Foreign Secretary Francis Separovic, and Secretary for Education and Public Engagement, Lynn Beazley. Thank you very much for that very warm welcome. I have to say that I'm kneeling at the feet of giants today after the procession you've seen, and I'm really honoured to have received this award. I have to say I thought it was far beyond my reach, but I'd like the generous recognition that the nominator, the awardee, the council and the selection committee gave in recognising this work to be a recognition of the brilliant co-workers that I've had the privilege of working with over the last few years. It is they for whom this award is given. I'd also like to thank the institutions with whom I've worked in Melbourne, the University of Melbourne, CSIRO, and Monash University. They made all this possible, and we were just the hands in the machine. And I hope you'll allow me also to pay tribute to Jenny for her inspiration, her love, and all her support over 51 years. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Minister Husic, President Jagadish and Vice President Helene Marsh for helping us to recognise these very worthy and quite extraordinary winners of these awards. I think the heartfelt comments we had and hearing an insight into their life stories as well as their achievements in science, it's just marvellous. Congratulations to all of them. I think another round of applause for our extraordinary winners.
Wow. Okay, we have one more surprise for you tonight. For many of us, we have moved through life with a voice that has become synonymous with science in Australia. The gentle voice of Robyn Williams has been like a call to action for the past 50 years. For many people, if they didn't love science before, they did after they began listening to the science show on ABC Radio. To be a science communicator takes passion, commitment and skill. To be a science communicator for over 50 years, well, that's a vocation. Robyn Williams can take credit for igniting that spark of curiosity in the hearts of many and setting so many on the path of wonder and discovery. Tonight, Robyn, we turn the microphone around and we salute you for your service to science and the nation over the last 50 years. Let's take a look.
This is The Science Show, and I'm Robyn Williams. Item number 1 was about the nuclear threat, an interview I did with scientists from the United Nations. The second item was about biodiversity, and this was a Vice-Chancellor from one of the Canadian universities, deploring what was happening to forests, biodiversity. And the third item was with Lord Ritchie Calder, who is the person in the House of Lords who is in charge of energy policy. And I heard him saying that here are the measures of the gases, the greenhouse gases, going into the atmosphere. And we've been saying since 1963, this is going to really be catastrophic for the climate. Here we are in 1975, and people have done nothing about it. Boing! And the last item in the Science Show that day was, by the way, the publisher of the Scientific American, who said young people are marching away from science. He said, my career as a publisher has failed. You know, it's incredible, the parallels. Because it's about the future. If you look at nature, nature's all around you. To do anything with science is to try to examine, to explore. So you're going from one place to the next, and you're trying to answer questions. And everyone's got a future, and everyone's got health, and everyone's got an environment that they care about. I remember David Suzuki saying during COVID, he discovered having a pee out in the open was an existential experience because he took it slowly and he looked. So science is about everything around you that matters. What they need to do, the scientists, is have a constant relationship with the decision makers. And I think they can demand that because now the evidence is overwhelming for two things. One of them, our natural future, when you consider the environment, biodiversity, as well as climate, as well as various other things to do with health and so on. Those are not just dependent on science, which we always knew, but utterly dependent. You know, it's really in crisis land. The second thing is that for every $1 you invest in science, you get $10 back. That's an investment. It's fantastic. It is really weird. No one in my family lived beyond 60. My brother died at the age of 60. My father at 57. The fact I'm here at 78 is weird. It's as if I've been reincarnated. I've been frozen overnight somewhere and still around. Gives you a different perspective. It opens the doors and a network. Journalists and filmmakers need a network, otherwise you get into bad habits. So whenever I go anywhere to do interviews, I say, okay, here are the famous people I want to see anyway. Hit me with the new ones I've never heard of. The Academy's been essential in that regard. And so there are all sorts of benefits. But of course, they're such wonderful people. It really is terrific stuff.
He has been the voice of Australian science for half a century. Wow.
I've listened to his podcast every week for the last several decades.
One word, enormous. Oh, Robyn Williams has absolutely given such a powerful voice to science and taken it out to so many different audiences. Extraordinary, if I'm allowed a second word.
It's his enthusiasm. He can make any topic sound exciting.
Saturday done well is Saturday listening to the science show.
That's a difficult one, but I think it's just his voice and his use of language that can that are appreciated by the professional scientist and my mother-in-law.
So whenever you talk about science communication, Robyn's name is synonymous to science communication.
I mean, I think that the science show is unique, really. I mean, I grew up in the UK and we really had nothing like that there.
Speaking with Robyn Williams, you always get the sense that everyone's perspective matters.
He talks to scientists and makes them sound human.
Well, what I think is most amazing is it's 50 years of a diverse set of stories and fields that he's brought to the wider community. I mean, no scientist would have the breadth of subjects that Robyn has covered.
Amazingly well prepared in advance of an interview, and then interviews very graciously and I think makes the interviewee feel very comfortable, usually.
Not only has Robyn been reflecting the science we do and producing it so well and sharing it, his ideas and his suggestions have helped us move forward in science.
Robyn is a really national treasure, and then we really need to cherish him, and we want to congratulate Robyn on his 50th anniversary. We wish him well, and we hope he'll continue to really make science exciting for the general public.
I'd like to congratulate Robyn on reaching this milestone and thank him for all his contributions to science communication.
Publicly, he's been the voice of science, as I said. I just can't imagine science broadcasting without Robyn.
So congratulations, Robyn. Here's to another 50 years.
Many, many congratulations. It's an extraordinary achievement. You've touched so many lives and always in a positive way.
Robyn, this is a fantastic achievement and you're a legend. Keep it up.
Come on, everybody. Right, we can't miss this moment. We've got to pass the mic across to the maestro.
The microphone's not. Oh, yes, it is. Gosh. Shall I do it from here? I'll go up, all right. Thank you. Stairs. That last part was incredibly unexpected. But what I said, I meant every word. That's why I've been coming here for all these decades. let me just tell you a little story. I travel around Australia and I find Minister of Science absolutely everywhere. I leave Sydney. Do you know what that's like? And for instance, I go to the northern part of New South Wales. And there I met a person called Bridget. And she told me a story about her father. Her father was a farmer, actually, and he went to the local bank. And he said he wanted a loan. And there were tough times. And the bank manager, they had them then, you saw them then, wasn't just a machine, said, what do you want it for? More compost? He said, no, I want it for my daughter's education. What? Isn't she supposed to go off and get married? And no, I wanted to go to the high school and then the university. So they argued, and eventually the bank manager gave him whatever it cost. Went to the University of New England in Armidale, and there Bridget studied hard. Parasites, there's a romantic thing to study. She studied parasites, got a first-class honours, and got a place in Cambridge, over there. She did incredibly well, studying exotic diseases, and decided to look at health, and went around the world and revolutionised ways in which malaria was being treated. And she did so well in that regard that she was hired by the Wellcome Trust and ran that for some time. And during the time she was there, she changed the investment that they had as a trust by 100%. And she ended up investing more on scientific research in medicine in Britain than the British government. Dame Bridget Ogilvie told me that her father had said to the bank manager, the investment in a woman in her education is the best investment you can possibly get. And that Dame Bridget Ogilvie ended up in the Royal Society of London and did science communication, is attached to Wollongong. I got that story by travelling around the country. There's science everywhere in the regions. Where I am on the south coast of New South Wales is brimming with it. You know, there's a person in Kiama who's developing e-boats, electronic boats that don't make noises and are safe for marine life, and are fantastic investments which he exports to Europe. And there's someone else who's growing seaweed, getting the CO2 from the local E10 station and putting it through the pond and growing seaweed, which makes food and the world that the Australian of the Year Fiona Wood uses for unguents, for skin. And round the corner in Wollongong, you've got someone growing ears for India, 3D printed organs, including corneas. It's everywhere around this country, and the synergy of everyone knowing that is going to make such a difference. That is why I keep doing it, because it's a continuing rapturous surprise of what you guys do. And what I first started doing at a time when Macfarlane Burnet was one of the very first scientists saying, okay, I'm overseas, but I'm coming back. The revolution started, and it started in my area because 3 people in the Academy of Science here, you people, decided we needed a science unit and established one in the ABC, which Peter Pockley opened in 1964, and I entered in 72. So thank you all, and I think that simply reflects, as far as I'm concerned, the richness of this country, which needs to be recognised, and it's worth a fortune, both culturally and financially. Thank you very much.
That's a hard act to follow, but I can't think of a better way towards the end of this evening's formalities than to honour such a wonderful friend to science. I think the standing ovation says it all. Gosh, tonight, everyone, has been a tremendous celebration of science, hasn't it? And we're so delighted to have shared it with everyone here. But before we finalise the formalities, we thought we'd do a toast, and it's a toast to 3 groups. It's a toast to all the families and friends who've made it possible. Our awardees tonight all paid tribute to their families, their loved ones, and their friends who've made it possible. And I know if you're a partner of a scientist, it's tough. It's tough in science, but without their support, I think many of us would not where we are today. So that's the first ones we're going to toast, the families and friends. The second, of course, are our awardees. And of course, the third is Robyn Williams. So I'm asking you to all raise your glasses and toast these amazing people who make science real. To real science and people who make it happen. Thank you. So we hope you've enjoyed this evening. Please continue to reconnect with old friends and colleagues and make some new friends tonight. There's every opportunity to do so. Again, warmest congratulations to the new elected fellows and to everyone awardees tonight. We're coming to the end of the formalities, but on a very practical note, and I'm looking to Anna Maria Rabia, the wonderful CE of the Academy. There are buses to Pepper's Gallery Hotel, QT Hotel and Mantra on Northbourne. What time are the buses, please, Anna Maria?
So we haven't gone over.
So, we're on time, Francis. Well, thank you from me, but I'm passing to the final word to wonderful Francis.
Oh, thank you, Lynn. It's been a pleasure working with you tonight. So, we've enjoyed being your hosts for this evening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the night. So, good night, everybody, and party on.